Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another week and another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, our final show in June. Lots to dive into today coming out of the NHL Draft in LA on the weekend. We'll discuss the picks the Jets made, hear from some of them, and get a full draft recap from a guy that did a lot of talking on Friday night, about 7 hours worth of it on Sirius XM NHL Radio. NHL's draft analyst Shane Malloy, who's going to join us courtesy of Hockey Prospect Radio. Looking forward to that. And of course, we go from draft into development camp into day one of NHL free agency tomorrow. We'll take a look at all of that with Mike McIntyre coming up on the program as well, who will join us a little later on after we dive into the past weekend and the draft picks with Shane Malloy. We'll also hit the CFL, an incredibly disappointing day yesterday for Canada's national men's soccer team, losing to frickin' El Salvador in penalties yesterday at US Bank Stadium. I was actually thinking very seriously about going down to the Twin Cities for that game, and just the logistics of getting back in time to do the show today didn't really work, and I can't say that I'm disappointed that I missed that yesterday, but a devastating loss for Canada, who would have been playing the United States on Wednesday in St. Louis in the Gold Cup semifinal if they had won. But hockey's the focus today, and of course some CFL football. Busy week in the Canadian League. Well, Remis and I will get to that as well. Quick programming note, CFL 110, normally on Tuesdays, will be on Wednesday this week with myself and Jeff Hamilton. But tomorrow, with it being free agency day, 1 p.m., we will have free agency coverage here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, and we'll tell you about that a little bit later on. Listen, just before we bring in Michael Remis, a big thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Our partners at Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Prairie Toyota Dealers and Ben Moss, Manitoba Battery Canadian Club, St. Vital Dental Center and Rowley's Transfer, Aikens Lake, F Apparel, Royal Sports, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes, who of course have their Canada Day game tomorrow, 4 p.m. down at the ballpark, Assiniboia Downs and Breezy Bend. We'll get to a why not question of the day for not Autocorp, but Waverly and McGillivray, and do a little fan feedback for fansfirst.ca. Welcome to everybody in chat. Shout out to all of you that are listening on the pod, and welcome to you, Michael Remis. What's going on? How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was a great weekend. Went out to Winnipeg Beach on Saturday. Amazing weather. And yesterday I took in the Gold Eyes game, and wonderful weather. Sitting in the sun, eating some delicious ice cream. Had to eat it quick. Melted all over the hands and my son's clothing, but it was a win. And the Gold Eyes won yesterday. A lot of runs yesterday. So a great weekend. Looking forward to a great June 30 Canada Day. I'm here in my Canada Day hat.
Yeah, nice hat. You did,
and shirt. There you
got
go.
a boy.
Canada soccer. I know they lost, but whatever.
Can't even look at that right now. I'm so disappointed at the game.
But I got
yesterday.
I got the Canada hat today. It's like the one day a year I can wear this one.
Is that the one from the World Baseball Classic?
No, this is just, I have that one. I have that one here. I got like 5 of these. But this one's just the Canada flag. It's a New Era hat. Where is it? It's New Era, but it's just the flag. Like you'll never see this.
So that is your Canada Day hat. Well,
this is
heck of a look.
I only wear this on Canada Day. Like it's literally just the flag. Like you've never seen a New Era hat with the flag. Like this is pretty silly. So
Yeah.
I'm here for this.
Hey, speaking of Canada Day, I have to ask, just before we dive into everything that happened on the weekend, is today a holiday? Is this a long weekend?
Yeah.
Like, how are we doing this, everyone? I mean, I see there's probably a lot of people that are off work today that might normally be at work that are still with us today. And I mean, obviously for us, it doesn't change that much. It's not really a long weekend because with the draft and everything, there's a lot going on. But with Canada Day being on Tuesday, like, are most offices closed today? Do people just get a 4-day weekend? Did you have to take an extra day? How is this all working?
I think I go by if my kids are in school or daycare or day camp, is it on? If the answer is yes, then it's not a holiday. So I was able to take them. So that means, people are working. But I think if you own a small business, you can do whatever you want. I know my dad closed up Friday. He's like, I'm not coming back till Wednesday. So I think you can do what you want. But I go by my kids' schedule, and I was able to drop them off today. And that was good because they were off last week during what was a busy week for us. And it was hectic managing both. So I think you can do whatever you want.
Yes, obviously our small business keeps growing at this point just because of how much going on right now. And of course, Canada Day, and listen, we won't relitigate this, but it is insane that Canada Day is the day that NHL free agency starts every year. Like, can we not get the 2nd or the 3rd or move it up a couple days in June and have everything be official on the 1st? I don't know, but it is what it is. And tomorrow's going to be a big day. And again, we will have free agency coverage tomorrow, 1:00 right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, although not a regular edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. And I'll tell you what, Reem, I missed being, we've been lucky enough to be at most of the recent drafts. And it is always a highlight of the entire year for us. I mean, just, in our business, just getting together with so many people that are guests of ours, getting a chance to see them in person, meeting a bunch of new people. And which can help the show early on. And of course, being boots on the ground for the biggest weekend when it comes to the league all year. That wasn't the case this year. So we, like everybody else, tuned in, watched that marathon broadcast out of LA, saw what the Winnipeg Jets did and the rest of the teams in and around the National Hockey League. And I will tell you, if you thought that there was a good chance that this was going to go back to the normal way things worked before the weekend, I think you're probably feeling even better about that because, listen, as we talked about, there was so much that went into this. I don't know how beneficial the savings were, moving people to the cities that they were in as opposed to moving everybody to LA. But I can tell you that the National Hockey League underwent a massive undertaking to make this thing virtual, to bring it, to connect the players to the teams right afterwards, which, by the way, was probably the most awkward part of it all, those live interviews right after the players had been drafted. We'll talk to Shane about this earlier on, but I'm quite bullish on the fact that we'll have a normal draft next year and we'll be back broadcasting live from wherever the draft is as opposed to what they did this season.
Yeah, that draft, I think when they had the idea for the way the format was going to go, wasn't going to be like, let's have it take 4.5 hours.
It was supposed to be quicker.
I don't know what went into that. So didn't totally hate the format, but you hated how long it took. And yeah, having the first meeting with the team and the player be on a video call, I don't know whose idea that was, but I think they made the right decision to not show that. It prolonged it and was awkward television. I mean, when they're meeting them in a normal draft, you just go up and shake their hands, and it's not totally on camera. So I think some lessons were learned, and I did have, it was kind of nice that I could just be at home following it and doing, was watching CFL, doing whatever, just waiting for the Jets to pick at 28, and it seemingly took forever. It was 23. It took so long. So I think the length was more the complaint for me. I had some moments. The Nikki Glazer, I like when she made the Blues pick. We
went Blues.
Yeah, man, she had some good lines. I like it when she goes on Amazon and does it on NFL. I like it. And Adam Sandler as Happy Gilmore. You had Joshua Jackson making the McQueen pick when he helicoptered him to Disneyland. So there were some moments, but yeah, it was way too long.
Speaking of Roger McQueen of the Wheaties, we spent a lot of time talking about just what an interesting prospect he was. Injured last year, dropped in the draft. He ended up being picked 10th by the Anaheim Ducks. Yes, as you mentioned, got helicoptered to Disney right afterwards. And I'm not sure whether the marketing department got in on the pick selection, but if you noticed what they put out after he was at Disney, guess what number McLean's wearing?
I saw that. It's
95, which I believe, now again, not having kids, I'm not as familiar with some of these, but there is a McQueen character from one of the Cars.
Yes.
Is it Cars movie?
Lightning McQueen, voiced by Owen Wilson, is the character. And yeah, there's some concern, though, Huss, that they just made the pick to get social media likes and for marketing reasons. So hopefully it works out for them. But yes, the Disney-inspired team takes the player with the name from the Disney Pixar movie.
It was, anyways, congratulations to Roger, who got picked 10th. Carter Bear, the first Manitoban off the board, at 13th overall to the Detroit Red Wings. 7 Manitobans picked, and the Jets getting into it as well, taking I guess only the third local product since they've been back. Yes. Owen Martin out of Oakbank, center with the Spokane Chiefs. So we'll hear from him. It certainly sounded very excited, and everyone around him very excited that the Winnipeg Jets have his rights, albeit, probably a few years away from potentially cracking an NHL lineup, but still very exciting for everyone there. And, I thought of the entire first round, Reem. Obviously, the Islanders were, in a lot of ways, the story. The Matthew Schaefer pick was as emotional a moment as I think you're ever going to see in the NHL. And, of course, he tragically lost his mother and his billet mother, like within 2 months of each other, when he was 16 years old. And very classy of the Islanders, knowing that, he had lost his mother to cancer, to put the purple cancer ribbon on his jersey that he was presented to after being picked the pick was announced by Commissioner Gary Bettman. And he kissed that when he was up there and, was in tears for a bit. And that's something I'll remember for a long, long time. Islanders fans, though, pretty fired up that not only did they get the number one player on the board, Matthew Schaefer, but go back-to-back with the picks they got in the Dobson trade earlier on. Had Victor Eklund, I believe Shane Malloy had him at 7th overall, and that Keyshawn Atchison out of Barrie, who is a bit of a headhunter, a bit of a throwback. So Islanders did their thing. But the big news around Winnipeg was taking Sasha Boumedienne, who was, in the teens in a lot of people's draft grades. Youngest player in NCAA hockey last year, Remo, and a really interesting mix. He is a Finn, or born in Finland, but is a Swede, if I've got this straight.
Yeah, he played for Sweden at the under-18s, born in Finland, and then moved to the U.S. 4 years ago.
Yeah, and now, so the NHL has him listed as a Finn. He plays for Sweden, lives in the States, and to be honest, looks like he's got a pretty French name. And now he's coming to Canada. So we'll find out more about Sasha Boumedienne coming up in a little bit. The picks, here are the Jets picks. Boumedienne went first, left-hand defenseman from Boston University. 6'2", 183, played as a 17-year-old in the NCAA last year. A great skater, poised puck mover, and they kept on describing him as an area defender. Not a guy that's going to be blowing dudes up at the blue line, but a very effective defenseman, being in the right spot, great hockey sense, moves the puck well. And they did say that some of his decision-making can be erratic. That probably happens as a 17-year-old, not overly physical, but projects to be a top 4 defenseman in the National Hockey League. The Jets and Mark Hillier, quick one. He beats guys with his feet and his first pass. So we'll hear more on Boumedienne, the Jets' number 1 pick. I think Shane had him. We'll ask him. But I think Shane had him in around 14 or 15 in the draft. No second-round pick. In the third round, the Jets selected Oakbank's Owen Martin from the Spokane Chiefs, who is profile a two-way center with a strong work ethic, better junior player than the NHL projection, but high character. Obviously, the Jets' angle is a local pick and pretty fired up to be drafted by the hometown team. The next pick is interesting. Fifth rounder, Victor Klingselj from Sweden. This was a player that was as high as the second round on some of the scouts' lists. Now, probably fell a little bit due to his size, was maybe a little inconsistent last year, but fast, competitive, skilled playmaker, and really stood out at the under 18s. They kind of viewed as a dog on a bone type, if you will, by the Jets, and could be a real potential value pick, as a number of lists had him well within the top 100. Two other late picks, which are, in a lot of ways sort of darts. But again, your player like Mason Appleton was selected in the 6th round. Was it Sammy Niku a few years back in the 7th? We all remember the Connor Hellebuck pick in the 5th round. So remember these names. 6th rounder, Edison Engel, left-hand defenseman from the Des Moines Buccaneers of the USHL. As NHL level skating, is going to move to the OHL and then to Ohio State. The scouting report reads raw, but skates really well, needs physicality and more offense to make it. And the Jets side of things, the analytics team likes his long-term upside. So we'll see whether he can be a player. And then the 7th round was Saginaw Spirit right winger Jacob Cloutier, another smaller player with a high compete level, smaller energy winger. And they said a little bit of a similar mindset to Klingselj, but less upside. Gritty, likely a depth swing. So, listen, Reem, 5 picks in the draft, a local product, which I'm sure was, pretty cool for Owen Martin. I think a lot of people around here, considering some of the maybe whiffs the teams had with players that, don't have any connection to Manitoba. But I have to say that first pick of Boumedienne, the more I've read about him and, seen highlights, very impressive to do what he did at such a young age, playing in the NCAA last year. And listen, there's still going to be time for him to go back, play more, and grow. But a lot of things that you're looking for in a first-round pick this young man has, including playing well ahead of his peers at a very young age.
Yeah, and first off, we do have to give a shout out to Eric Comrie, who announced the pick. We weren't sure who the announcer.
Comrie's been everywhere, giving away Hart trophies, now making first-round picks.
Oh, yeah, he was there with the Hart Trophy with Hellebuck. And, yeah, he's from the LA. I think that's his off-season home, so it makes sense to have him there. And he did give a shout-out to the organization. What do you call? See someone noted in chat here, calling Mark Chipman the best owner in sports before making the pick, and certainly an interesting prospect in Sasha Boumedienne. You look at his under 18s when he's playing with his peers, set the record for points by defenseman, and he was the youngest player in NCAA. You have to wonder if he was playing against players more his age, would he have gone a bit higher? And I think, look, when you're picking 28th, you're not going to have the upside of players getting picked in the top 10, so you're doing, you're picking with what's available to you. And he's here this week at development camp, and interested to see how this goes as we follow. We're now Boston University fans and coached by former NHLer Jay Pandolfo. I'm sure that's a nice resource to have as well. And his dad played 40 plus in the NHL, was part of the Columbus Blue Jackets organization for a while too. So interesting selection. And again, looking forward to seeing how his next season goes with Boston.
All right, we're going to hear from a few of the players that were selected in just a minute. But, considering we already sort of talking about this, why not question of the day for Not Autocorp and Waverly McGilvery? Reactions to the virtual draft. We've already got a lot of takes on here. You can continue bringing them into the chat right now with us live on YouTube here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. But, the fan feedback for Fans First, we'll get right into that right now. Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market. No added fees. What you see is what you pay. And while we wait for Jets season to get going, Bomber games, sold out Bomber games. Looking for tickets, head to fansfirst.ca. They will have you covered. I see a lot of people. Yeah, Tony Valeri, free agency on the 4th of July would be outstanding. It would be. But again, that would conflict with Joey Chestnut, who owns the 4th of July. So I would prefer a day that's not the 1st or the 4th, to be honest. Boring Sean Monahan, I hope that draft format is never done again. Big Al Winnipeg, this year's draft was bad on so many levels. Make your pick in 5 minutes or lose it. That will speed things up. Ian Wilson. Actually did happen, and the Viking fans will remember the Vikes being late to the podium in the NFL draft and having their 7th pick turn into the 9th pick overall. Chris Mulligan, I don't know who thought people wanted a whole show centered around Gary Bettman for 4 hours. Bettman, to be honest, kind of was the star, Remo. They even had some boos at the start. But yeah, Nicole J, it was unwatchable. Overall, I don't think the returns were what they were hoping to get. And at the end of the day, this wasn't even Bettman's idea. This was the general managers that wanted to do it. Well, guess what? GMs, you're no longer in charge of these decisions. And I have a feeling we'll be going back to the normal run. Fansfirst.ca brings you fan feedback by fans, for fans, no fees. All right, we're going to hear from Sasha Boumedienne and some of the other drafted players in just a minute. Before we do that, a big happy Canada Day to all of you from our friends at Rolly's Transfer. If you've got to move later on this summer or the fall, lean on the most trusted name in moving for over 60 years in Manitoba at Rolly's. You can find out more on their website at rollys.com, and you can request an estimate, and make sure to use the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. And of course, they'll give you a great quote. You lock that in and get that white glove treatment that Rolly's has been famous for years here in Winnipeg, to take you and your family and all your prized possessions on to your next stop. For your next move, make it Rolly's. Find out more, request an estimate today over at rollys.com. And a big happy Canada Day as well to our friends at St. Vital Dental Center. I know Terry and his great staff over at 167 St. Anne's will be looking forward to celebrating tomorrow. But of course, they're running all summer long. Great time to get you and the family in. If you've been looking for a new spot for your family, they're doing clients from 6 months to 99 plus with every single dental procedure you could need, from things like cleanings to more impactful things like dental implants. You can find out more online at stvitaldental.ca. Make an appointment, pop in like many other WSTers have, and tell Dr. Terry that the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. Speaking of Canada Day, what's more Canadian than Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey, and of course the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But when you're popping in your Manitoba liquor marts these days, look for Canadian Club. Also check out the new club pack of their 3 ready-to-drink coolers: the Canadian Club and Ginger Ale, the Citrus Smash, and the Half and Half, now all available together in a 12-pack at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And hey, what is more Canadian than getting out to the lake, getting out on the water? Manitoba Batteries got you covered for that, folks. Of course, your local go-to spot for all things batteries, where you will save big money and time over the big box store. So stop wasting your time going into the Costco's and shop local and save 50 to 60 bucks a battery for things like boats and campers, and get the best service in town, as well as Manitoba Battery will deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over 60 bucks. It is just that easy. So get ready to have a great summer, and make sure you're powered with Manitoba Battery, Logan Avenue, Dovercourt Drive. Order online at manitobabattery.com. All right, let's get to a few of the picks today. And listen, the number one pick is always at the top of the list. Sasha Boumedienne, who we just mentioned, drafted out of BU, spoke after being picked by the Jets, and talked about his game, the type of player he is, and what he's bringing to the Jets organization.
Yeah. Crazy day. We started with the prospect breakfast and yeah, I kind of jumped out of bed and today was finally the day. I look forward to this day for a pretty long time. So yeah, nothing but good emotions and I have a bunch of family here, so it's pretty special.
For people who haven't watched you play, how would you describe your game?
Yeah, I describe myself as a two-way defenseman who plays really hard all over the ice and uses skating to my advantage. Like to join the rush and create offense and kind of make quick plays and a quick shot and yeah, kind of create offense from there. So yeah, a defenseman who'll play hard all over the ice and kind of do a little bit of everything.
All right, Sasha Boumedienne drafted first, 28th overall by the Winnipeg Jets. As I mentioned, he was the youngest player in NCAA Division I hockey last year. Here's what he had to say about being just 17 and playing against players 22, even 23 years old.
I kind of jumped rapidly in my development and yeah, where I've been, and I think it's just been good for my development. I really wanted to challenge myself, especially this year with going to BU and being the youngest guy, and yeah, I felt like we had a really good plan in place for me, and yeah, I want to challenge myself while playing against bigger players and kind of playing more of that pro style game with those yeah, bigger, stronger, older players. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just good for my development.
All right. Now, as I mentioned off the top, Sasha's sort of quite worldly. Finnish roots, Swedish roots, spent the last 4 years in the United States. Here's Sasha just talking about his path here and where he grew up.
I was born in Finland. Yeah, I grew up most of my childhood in Stockholm, Sweden. Like you said, moved to America 4 years ago because of my dad's job, and we moved here as a whole family. And yeah, now I'm drafted by Winnipeg, so really excited.
Yeah, drafted by Winnipeg, very excited. Here's what he had to say about his pre-draft conversations with the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I had a really good feeling about Winnipeg. Talked to them before the combine, at the combine, and then I had a Zoom call with them yesterday at 8:30 a.m. So I had a really good feeling about Winnipeg. Yeah, if I was available at 28, I had a really good feeling about it, and obviously my feeling was right, and yeah, all my talks with Winnipeg have been great. So I'm really happy about it.
Now, for everyone that was struggling to pronounce Sasha's name correctly when they saw those 13 letters on his last name, here's what he had to say about the correct pronunciation of Boumedienne.
Sasha Boumedienne.
There we are, Sasha Boumedienne. So we maybe won't French it up with the en. It's like Eon, I believe it is, and maybe that's the Finnish/Swedish version of the name. Anyways, exciting young prospect for the Winnipeg Jets. Here's what Kevin Cheveldayoff had to say about the young man tabbed at number 1, 28th overall by the club.
He's a unique individual in the sense that he was one of the youngest, I think the youngest for a while in college hockey there, but one of the youngest in college hockey. And just, the way he improved, over the year, and obviously had an outstanding U18 tournament. But it's the way he plays. He transports the puck. He can beat pressure with his skating. Good two-way game. Comes from a family that obviously has been in the game, so he's been around it his whole life. Again, it's an exciting time, for us to be able to add that kind of quality of a player picking at 28.
All right, and one more from Chevy. This is just on the fact that, he was playing at such a high level as a 17-year-old, the youngest player in the NCAA.
So I think you just watch, his progression over the course of the year, and his best plays were, in the toughest moments. He played, big minutes, down the stretch, in all situations. So those are things. That's what the year is all about. You learn, you continue to grow, and you take advantage of it, and he did. So obviously the role that he'll play, next year is just going to be that much greater, more important for him. And that's a testament to him, because it's, again, going through the processes of learning and playing at a level where, lots of players are, much older than you. And so it's all part of the development that really intrigued us.
All right, so there's Shovel Day off in the Jets' #1 pick. Now, Remo, let's just pop down to 13 and 14 before we get to Mark Hillier. The Jets next went to the podium at 92 overall, 3rd round, and tabbed Oakbank native Owen Martin to be the next Jets draft pick. Here's Martin on being picked by his hometown team.
Yeah, it's been unbelievable. Been sitting here at home with a lot of family, a lot of friends. So just watching the draft, watching it on TV. It's just been an unbelievable experience. All my family and friends being here to experience it with me, it's just been unbelievable.
How would you describe your strengths as a player and your development path over the course of the year here?
Yeah, I think some of my skills are my skating, and then my reliability, my two-way game. I think I'm just as good, if not better, defensively than I am offensively. So I think I bring a lot to the game.
So there's Owen Martin on being picked, and obviously what the sort of player that he brings to the organization. Here's one more from Owen, who, this is going to make you feel old, everybody, was 4 years old when the Winnipeg Jets returned to the National Hockey League in 2011, meaning that he grew up watching the Jets. Here's what Owen had to say on that.
When they first came back, I went to a lot of Jets versus Minnesota Wild games because I've got family from up in Minneapolis. So there's a lot of those games that I went to with my whole family, and just getting drafted by them today is just, like I've been saying, it's just unbelievable. So much fun, so cool.
All right, so there is Owen Martin as well. Now, Mark Hillier, of course, is oversees the entire scouting team for the Winnipeg Jets. Always interested to hear what Hillier has to say about the process and the players that ended up being picked by Winnipeg. Mark met the media after the festivities in LA, and here's what he had to say on the class of 25 for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, we were happy with our haul of the 5 picks. Got 5 players that can all skate and have some skill. Bamidian, really good skater, puck moving defenseman, gets back to pucks quickly, beats pressure and moves the puck. Second power play guy, probably at the pro level, and kind of new age defenseman, skating, speed, puck moving.
All right, now let's just do a quick little rundown from Hillier on the rest of the Winnipeg Jets picks. Here is Mark Hillier on the 3rd rounder, Owen Martin.
Yeah, he's an intriguing player for us, has a pretty good size, really good skater, has some skill, but has a good, smart two-way game. Coached by Brad Lauer in Spokane, so he's got good development there. Had a really strong playoff this season. We expect those offensive numbers to even pop more next year, but really solid two-way guy.
All right, so that is Owen Martin, the hometown kid, picked in the 3rd round. The Jets next went to the podium and selected Victor Klingsell, a Swede. Here's what Hillier had to say on the Jets' 5th rounder.
Well, hopefully he's a steal. We really liked him all year long. He's a well-known player. He's not the biggest guy in the world, 5'10", but we met him at the combine. He has a real solid frame on him, thick, solid 5'10". He can really skate, has really good speed. He played in all the international tournaments this year for the under-18 team. Plays in a good program in Skellefteå. And he's got good offensive upside. He's got some grit to his game. He's a dog on a bone on pucks. And he's a nice player.
All right, Mark Hillier then talked about their 6th rounder, the American defenseman Edison Engel.
Played in Dubuque. He'll go to Brantford next year and then on to Ohio State at some point. Using our analytics a little bit too, he's one of the best skaters that we thought was in the draft. So it's a good opportunity for us to take him late. We think there's more offensive ability to come from him in the future. But really, sort of like Boumediene, he really gets back to pucks quickly, separates from the forecheck, and moves the puck quick. And we think if he can add a little to his offensive game in the future, we got a pretty good value pick there.
All right, and then one more. It was the 7th rounder, Jacob Kluter.
Yeah, similar to Klingzel, lots of speed in his game, lots of quickness, and lots of skill, and he competes. You know, he's 5'10", but he plays bigger than his size. So we like that pick there too.
Kluter, it's the 7th rounder for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, just a couple more clips from Mark Hiller to finish this off. Back to the first round, and Sasha Boumediene. Hiller was asked about how he showed against players his own age playing in the U18s.
Yeah, reinforce some things where he played on the power play and stuff. You know, he didn't get a lot of power play opportunity at BU. He might have played the second one where you play 20 or 30 seconds, but he was the main guy at the under 18. So his skill came out there. But, you know, we saw the progression all year long where, the youngest guy in college hockey had, he was always in the lineup, but limited ice time the first half of the year. And then by the playoffs, the Final Four and stuff, he's, playing 24, 25 minutes. So there was really good progression all year.
And one more for Mark Hillier. Just talked about the process of selecting Boumediene.
Yeah. When we meet, our final meetings were in May, but then we're meeting on Zoom every week after May, and we're meeting a few days ago here when we get here. And, I make it clear that everybody's got their own individual list, but when we start the draft here, it's the Winnipeg Jets list, and we're not straying off it in the first round there. And like I said, we had probably 3 players that we were comfortable in taking that were left on the board there, and we had them rated higher. And Boumediene was at the top of that list, and he was going to be our guy.
All right, so there's Mark Hillier, the Jets director of amateur scouting, with his wrap-up of the festivities and the picks for the Winnipeg Jets in 2025 from the weekend in Los Angeles. Now, there's been a lot going on today in the National Hockey League, and we'll kind of dive into it more with Mike McIntyre. We can tell you that Victor Tarasenko is going to the Minnesota Wild. He was acquired for future considerations, but they take on that cap hit, potentially taking them out of the race for Brock Besser. I guess we'll see. Matthias Maselli is now a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, coming over from Utah for a 3rd-round pick. And Nick Hague has landed in Nashville from Vegas and also signed a 4-year deal at $5.5 million. We're hearing all sorts of stuff about Mitch Marner, but it does sound like a potential trade to Vegas could happen at some point today. And Elliot Friedman saying that there's, I don't know whether they've just used the word blackmail, but potential of an investigation as to tampering from the Vegas Golden Knights with Mitch Marner. So potentially a trade might ease that and prevent the Leafs from making that complaint. Because apparently, according to Elliot, the league is very much looking forward to making an example of some team that has been tampering and see whether that has anything. Although we haven't really heard a lot about Nikolai Ehlers, although we have heard teams that would be interested in that. Brad Marchand potentially going to Toronto or Utah if he doesn't stay in Florida. And Glenn Gulletson is in all likelihood going to be the next coach. There's been an offer made to coach the Dallas Stars. Matthew Nyes did sign with the Leafs, 6 years, $7.75. Giroux got a 1-year deal to stay in Ottawa. And Morgan Geekie got a nice deal with the Boston Bruins today, 6 years, $33 million. And Kasperi Kapanen gets a slight raise. He stays with the Edmonton Oilers, I believe 1.3 on a 1-year deal. But we're going to get to Shane Malloy in just a minute, and then Mike is going to join us. But hey, tomorrow, Canada Day, Princess Auto Stadium is the place to be, folks. Get the kids, get the family, and head down for a free family-friendly event that promises a day packed with festivities and great entertainment. The tailgate stage gets going at 12 noon. The Mason Hoop Dancers, Flying Lion Dance Troupe, Papa Mambo, amongst others. They'll also have face painters, a street magician, balloon twisters. And then the main stage events, early on, the Blue Bombers Barbecue Pitmasters Showdown Awards ceremony will happen. And then Neighbor Andy, Jade Turner, Tyler Joe Miller, headliner Big Wreck playing at 9 p.m., followed by fireworks at 10:30, all completely free tomorrow at your home of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Princess Auto Stadium. Also, God, I can't wait. It's less than a week or just over a week till we'll be out at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. I know there's a lot of people doing some fishing this weekend. I'll be getting after it next week with our winner of the HSC Foundation Lottery. Now, if you're thinking about an incredible fly-in fishing experience this year where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, you got to check out Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. Go to aikenslake.com for more information on options and availability for the 2025 fishing season. And listen, as great as the fishing is, it's the hospitality, I think, that really puts Aikens over the top. But check out at Aikens Lake on all your social platforms for more on what the Aikens experience is all about. And happy Canada Day to our friends over at F Apparel. Just had a big sale the last couple days for the weekend, and now it is on to June. It's wedding season right now. Guys, if you need to up your menswear game, F Apparel's the spot to do it. Custom suits, chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, best in menswear accessories, all waiting for you at 190 Smith Street. If you are in a wedding party, make sure to talk about a special discount for the wedding party when the fellas get their suits for the big day at F Apparel. You can see them in store, 190 Smith Street downtown. Beautiful new showroom they've just put together for their 15th anniversary. And, of course, you can check them out online and make an appointment at F. That's EPHapparel.com. All right, we are going to welcome in Shane Malloy to get the full lowdown on everything that happened, his thoughts on the Jets picks and more. And then Mike McIntyre will join us a little later on. This segment's brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss, proudly Canadian-owned and operated with history dating back more than 100 years, with 3 locations in Winnipeg, Polo Park Shopping Center, St. Vital Center, and Kildonan Place. Committed to customer satisfaction, check out a large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, and mined diamonds available with payment plans to suit your need. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. All right, let's welcome in Shane Malloy to recap the NHL Draft on the weekend. Shane, what's going on? You're back safe and sound after a very busy weekend?
It was a very busy week leading into it. So I left for the draft on a Thursday. So that was entirely a travel day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I think I did 11 or 12 shows leading in because we had already done all our pre-work. So we had done just on Hockey Prospect Radio, not including the other stuff we did on the network prior. I think we ended up doing 14 hours of draft preview. And then I did like a 10 to 12 shows. And then we got to LA.
all those shows probably was good practice and training for how long you were going to be on the air. If anyone was following the draft or listening to Sirius XM NHL Radio, Shane put in a shift. I just have to ask you. I mean, listen, we always love the draft so much because we get to see people like you in person. It really is a hockey convention, if you will. That didn't happen this year. And, I mean, listen, we don't need to go down all the pros and cons of the format, but just you were there. How do you think it went? It certainly took a hell of a long time.
It did. I give Steve in the NHL head office an incredible amount of credit for the yeoman's work that he did, because there's all these different variables. So there's like 3 or 4 NHL network television going on. There's NHL Network Radio, us. Then you're trying to get 32 teams all locked in with technology at the same time. And this is all supposed to work. And if one thing doesn't work, it's a cascading effect. So I think they did a fantastic job based on the scenario that the general managers put them in. And I would say it was probably maybe 10%, 15% of the media that was there last year was present this year. There was almost nobody there. The event was not full. The second day was completely empty. I mean, completely. 90% empty. There was nobody there. So none of the insiders were there except for Elliot Friedman because he's Sportsnet. They are broadcast rights. And none of the teams were there. The majority of the players weren't there, obviously. And almost none of the, not all the agents were there. So it wasn't the convention it was previously. So I'm expecting they're going to go back to the regular format next year.
It was all Shane Malloy all the time. If you were listening to the series,
yeah, no, it was nonstop.
I'm just impressed that you've got your voice.
There's people that are yelling, man. Shut up. We're done. You can go away anytime now.
Well, listen, it's great to have you back, and we do appreciate it after how busy you've been. Listen, we'll get to the kind of the draft overall, but for Jet fans, everyone was interested as to what they would do with the 28th overall pick. They used the pick and selected young defenseman Sasha Boumedienne. Played in the NCAA, youngest player around. Where did you have him ranked, and what do you think of the pick and the fit for Winnipeg, Shane?
I had him 15th overall and one of the main reasons is when you look at the NHL teams don't just draft for their particular organization. They have to draft for the rest of the league too, because it's not a guarantee that player is going to be with this organization for his entire career. So you have to consider what his value potentially would be in the marketplace. So I think the Jets do this exceptionally well in understanding, okay, is this player valuable not just to us, but to everybody? And in Boumedienne's case, you got a defenseman who, and I think he was maligned unfairly, because if he was in London or Kitchener or, Medicine Hat, the kid he would have put a point a game defenseman. No problem. No problem in the CHL because of his mobility and because of his lankiness and the fact that he can move up and down the ice and can jump into play and run a power play. You have a kid who was 17 years of age coming in as a freshman, didn't turn 18 till the turn of the calendar, not playing against 18-and-a-half-year-old kids, boys in the CHL. He's playing against 21-and-a-half-year-old young men, in some cases 22 or 23. And, he had some early stumbles in the beginning, which is understandable coming into a new environment like that. But then I thought down the second half, and then most defensemen do, late hard charge. So I thought he really found his game and adapted. And then as he moved into the U18s, really obviously blew up. But that didn't change where I had him. Like the U18s didn't change. I had him dialed in up in this area because when you look at whether I'll frame it this way. If you look at what GMs value in the trade deadline, what they value in free agency, and then how the playoffs are played, you got to take all those considerations and apply it back to the draft. And I did that with Boumedienne because I think sometimes we complicate this game. It's really about creating time and space and taking away time and space. And that's something Boumedienne's going to be able to do. He's not a banger and crasher. He's a guy who skates the game effectively, makes smart passes, is going to retrieve the puck quickly and get the puck out of the zone quickly, and he'll defend by using his mobility, his stick, and his sort of lanky body, and just take away time and space. It's something that Rick Nash had mentioned to me when he was a guest on our show. He said, look, it wasn't the bangers and crashers I had problems with or the offensive defensemen. It was just the guys that just got in the way, who just took away my time and space. And that's how Boumedienne's going to defend. And I thought the Jets got good value at 28th overall.
Yeah, I heard on the broadcast he was described as sort of an area defender. And then, a lot of people were going, well, what does that mean? And they said his closest NHL comparable might be Gustav Forsling. And considering what he and the Panthers have done, I'm sure that's fair. That's fair. Now, obviously, Boumedienne is going to be a little bit taller and a little bit heavier. But, Gustav took quite a while for that to transition to the NHL. He had some stumbles along the way, and then eventually, developed into a great defenseman. I think that's an appropriate description. He's just take away time and space.
get the puck out of the zone as soon as possible. Join the rush because of your mobility, and then be able to produce points up like once you get into the offensive zone. Because he's smart about moving the puck.
Was obviously a great skater. Going into next season, Shane, now that he's selected, has a year under his belt at the NCAA, what are your expectations? And is there an area of the game that you or the organization here will probably be looking for improvement in?
Well, I think he should stay in college 2 more years because he came in so early. I don't like to see 19 and 20-year-olds in the American Hockey League unless you can absolutely help it. It's too tough of a league. I would be, for him, look, he's not a physical player, but I want him to play a little bit stiffer. That's going to come as he matures physically. He hasn't grown into his man body yet, so that'll happen. I like to see him a little bit more consistent in terms of moving the puck out of the zone. Early on, he took some risks that were unnecessary, and that can be cleaned up. That's really about just making sure that you manage the puck more effectively and just being able to defend down low and understanding how to use leverage, how to understand how to use gap on defenders, how to get underneath armpits and get into knees and get on the hips and tie up sticks. Look, Jimmy Roy and his development staff, they're going to love this kid. And there's lots of runway for development. So I think, give him 2 more years in college and then bring him into pro.
Shane, the Jets didn't have a second rounder. They used their third rounder on a local product, Oakbank, Manitoba native, Owen Martin, a forward from the Spokane Chiefs. What can you tell us about the Jets' third rounder?
Well, I think once you get into the late third round, or actually into the third round down to the 7th, this is where you're getting a lot of role players. Now, occasionally you're going to get a later round pick that turns into a second line player or a top 4 defenseman. It does happen, but it's rare. For me, with Owen Martin, this is really an identification of a player who's going to play a specific role. So I think if he develops into an NHL player, he's a 4th line center. He has really strong defensive awareness and habits. So for a kid that age, it's actually quite impressive. His habits are very good. He plays with good pace and energy. He's a penalty killer, and he's a right hand shot on faceoffs as a centerman. So I think as he grows into it, and there's no rush, that's the advantage is now that things have opened up to go play in college hockey, you could have him play, a couple more years in the CHL, then go down and play a couple years in college against bigger, stronger, faster, more structured, more mature players, and then have him come into the American Hockey League so they can slow play his development. I think that's an advantage, but certainly this is a kid you could look 6 years from now and say, oh, I remember him as a third line pick, and that's a really savvy pick because he's a really strong 4th line role player.
Shane, Victor Klingzel was the next guy picked by the Winnipeg Jets. And this was a guy that, depending on who you talked to or what lists you looked, was actually quite a bit higher than some others. Listen, not a big guy, but I have a feeling that sort of hurt him in the draft. What did you think of that selection by Winnipeg?
Well, he's not tall, but he's stocky. He's 5'10", 187 pounds. So that will be his advantage. He's going to have to play low. He's quick. He's an agile, deceptive skater. I think he has above average puck skills to good, above average hockey sense to good in terms of the offensive hockey sense. Now, obviously he lacks a little bit of size. Must improve his defensive game off the puck. I think an ideal situation for him, if I was going to tell him to watch game film of a specific NHL player, I look at Connor Garland. Because Connor Garland came out of the Q, and he was more of a one-dimensional offensive player that's a little bit smaller, but he really developed a B game, that off-puck game that's really necessary to play at the NHL level. So could Victor Klingzel turn into a guy that can provide offense on a third line, but his off-puck game is based on energy and dogging pucks and digging in and being a pest defensively and forcing the puck carriers to make plays faster than they want to? I think that's the type of player he could potentially develop into, because there's always going to be some guy in those 4th to 7th rounds that comes up and ends up playing in the third line.
Listen, I won't go right down to the 7th round because I'm sure you've talked about enough of these players, but anything on the Jets' 5th round selection, Edison Engel, that defenseman from the United States?
Lanky, mobile 4-way. His mobility is quite good. Potential shutdown 6'7" defenseman. He went from the USHL. Now he's going to the OHL in Brantford. And then the following year, he's scheduled to go to Ohio State. And he just needs to get bigger and stronger and a little bit stiffer defensively. But it's a really great track for him to go play in the OHL, play against some really good competition, then go to college hockey. If you can get 3 years there, I think that's where you can really solidify his game. I think sometimes players really need to be able to have an identity to work towards. And I think for him, because of his mobility, he could end up being one of those shut down mobile defensemen, again, who just, 6'7" defenseman who can take away time and space, uses mobility, and just plug and play. And you don't have to worry about him. So for him, if he goes towards that more shut down defensive role, he has less things to learn and adapt to and perfect than if he was going to be more of a two-way guy who had to provide some offense and push the puck up the net, up the ice and transport a little in that area as well. So I think that's an opportunity. I like when players understand what their identity is as early as possible, so then they can work towards it as quickly as possible. And they don't have any issues in changing their identity. Sometimes, like, people, we don't like that as human beings. We don't like changing who we are, right? And we think of ourselves a certain way, but that may not be what reality is or how that's going to make you successful in another area.
Shane Malloy is back from all the draft coverage in LA on the Sirius XM NHL radio with us on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Outside of the Jets pick, Shane, let's go back to the first round. Listen, this sort of the Islanders, took over the show, trading for those 2 picks in the Dobson deal, and of course, already having won the lottery. Tell us about Matthew Schaefer, the ceiling for him as the number 1 pick, and what did you think the Islanders did with those other 2 first-round selections?
Well, I can't say enough about Matthew Schaefer as a person and all the things he's gone to and things that have transpired and happened in his life. We interviewed him. I've never seen a player that age have that level of maturity and grace and dignity in that situation. We were blown away. So for me, I always thought in terms of his skill set, he had the potential to be a number 1 defenseman, to play in all situations, first penalty kill, first power play, number 1 defenseman, matching up. His mobility is excellent. His hockey sense is elite. And his work ethic is obvious to me. So one day he's going to end up being a number 1 defenseman in the NHL. But I think now he's going to be a leader. People are going to gravitate towards him because of the resilience that he has shown and how he handles stress. It's impressive. I rarely see adults that can handle those situations like he did. So, and it was really hard for people interviewing him not to cry, like broadcasters in LA, like radio and TV. You saw them all choking up, trying not to fall apart while you're trying to interview this young man because his story was so compelling and he had such grace and dignity. It was impressive. And then for the other 2 picks, I thought they got really great value. I was actually, when I look back at my list, and I have to look at my list as a comparable, I had Victor Eklas 7th overall. So for me, getting him at that spot, that was really impressive. And I thought that was really great value for them there. And then getting Keyshawn Atchison as well, I had him at 13. So for me, 2 things that stand out. Now, if you put them both side by side and you think about their game, you wouldn't think that they have something in common. But they're both highly competitive. Victor has that small brother syndrome. So he's actually gritty and the dog on the bone, and he likes to battle. He's not a big guy, but he's fearless. And he gets his nose in where it doesn't belong. And I think that's going to really propel him into a first-line role. I think he had first-line winger written all over him, because he's willing to go places where he doesn't belong, and he'll take the hits and the punishment to go there. Then Keyshawn Atchison, great character. He's a predator, an absolute predator. He is a throwback from the 80s and 90s. If you're lingering around, coming through the neutral zone, he's going to knock you out. And he doesn't just hit you to hit you. He hits you to hurt you and to intimidate you, so that you understand you never want to go on his side of the ice ever again. You get him in the corners, he's just going to take a pound of flesh every time. Like, he had thrown hits that Scott Stevens would have been envious of this year. He really is absolutely fearless. His timing is excellent. He's got a bomb for a shot. I really think he has the capability of being a number 3 defenseman that insulates. Number 1 penalty kill, absolute intimidator. He has a few things he's got to clean up, but he can get some goals with that shot. He's got a bomb for a shot. So I thought the Islanders cleaned up. They absolutely cleaned up this year.
Those crazies on Long Island are going to love him for those Rangers-Islanders games when he hits.
Like both of them.
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is Victor Eklund's going to start it. He's going to start it, and he's going to get in there and cause issues and be a total pest and a pain in the rear end, and then Action's going to finish it. And he can fight. He can throw him. He's not afraid. And he can throw him. He's a total throwback. That's why I had him that high, because he is such a rarity. And that type of intimidation matters in the playoffs and in hockey. And for me, I add added value to that type of player.
Shane, let me ask you on that, because it's been a topic that we've talked about for the last couple months as we've gone through the playoffs as it pertains to the draft. You watch the Florida Panthers, and they are taking teams to the alley and beating them there and leaving them there and then coming back out for their next opponent. They play with the level of physicality, a nasty that most other teams don't have. And that seems to be something that helps you win in the playoffs. How difficult is it to identify that in these young players and project that into the NHL? And how much did that play into your rankings and the rankings of these players going into the draft?
I've changed the way and I've always been more old school in that respect. But what I did was I went back and looked at how the playoffs have been played, particularly over the last 15 years. It really, honestly, hasn't changed. And then I took into consideration at the trade deadline, what do GMs covet? At the free agency, what they covet, and then how the game is played. And I apply all those lessons back into the draft. So it impacts my draft. It was funny. I had Jason Bukla on my show. We reviewed my top 32 list, and I spent more time talking about the B game of players than their actual A game. For me, the majority of the value can come from the B game. Because think about it from this perspective. Even if you're a top-end player and you play 18 minutes as a forward, how much of the time do you actually have the puck in your stick? Is that 4%, 5% of the time? So what are you doing with the other 95% of the time to help your team win, whether your team has the puck or not? And that's all B game. And you look back, the way Florida plays isn't new. The LA Kings played that way and won 2 cups. I thought Vegas was built like that when they won. Tampa Bay was built like that way when they won. So was St. Louis. And the only team that's been a bit of an anomaly in that area was Colorado. And they skilled their way through and won. But everybody else had this mix of nasty edge and skill. And you have to have it. It's the war of attrition. And an interesting fact, I don't know if you noticed, is this is the first year in the draft easily over the last decade or more, where there wasn't a defenseman that was sub 6 foot that was drafted. Not one defenseman under 6 feet tall was drafted this year. Zero. And there's a reason for it. Look back at all the teams that drafted sub 6 defensemen or 6 foot tall defensemen, and they didn't pan out. They didn't work out. There was that analytics love for the smaller mobile defensemen, and they're going to be able to succeed. And teams jumped on that bandwagon, and it blew up in their face. So, learn your lesson. And people said to me, well, why don't you have these guys higher? I'm like, it's just, I couldn't do it because they weren't going to translate, unfortunately. And how much, I'm not being mean to these defensemen, but Adam Boquist and Nick Beaudin and Eric Brandstrom, defensemen are all drafted in the first round. We can go over a laundry list of smaller defensemen who just had a hard time converting their game to the NHL. It's not new. And look at the Winnipeg Jets. They don't very often pick a defenseman that's 6 feet tall. And if they have, a lot of the times it hasn't really worked out for them. And the other NHL teams are no different.
Yeah, certainly a lot of people are thinking Billy Heinola right now. And then you look at what they did with the second round pick and Dylan Sandberg, who's turned into a mainstay of their top 4. And hopefully the Boumedienne pick will be more on the Samberg side than so far to this point in the Villy camp. After Schaefer went, 9 of the next 11 picks were centers. Thoughts on the best picks of those group, and which of those centers, Shane, were helped more by the B game as you described? I mean, all these guys, as you're getting picked in the top 10, they can score, they can do a lot of things. Who were those players that maybe were helped by these trends that you were just talking about?
Well, Denoyer and Frondel. So Caleb Denoyer out of Moncton and Anton Frondel out of Djurgården are perfect examples of that B game, of that off puck play, that defensive responsibility. Both those players, their additional value was based on that. So you look at Hagens and O'Brien, who are much more skill oriented, who still need to work a little bit on their B game. Those other 2 defensemen were taken higher. And it's because of that, because there's going to be a translatable aspect for their game overall. Now, at the end of the day, and Brady Martin's another example of that too. B game, he's a honey badger, right? He's a Sam Bennett clone in that respect. All went higher. And at the end of the day, I would be willing to sacrifice 10 to 15 points per year to have all that extra value on the B game and the tenacity every day of the week. So if somebody has 90 points a year versus 75, but the 75-point player is a two-way guy who's gritty and play in a lot of different areas, I'll sacrifice the 15 points all day.
Shane, Carter Bear was the first Manitoban taken. He went 13th to Detroit Red Wings. And frankly, I believe only the second winger taken in the draft. What did you think of Carter, and what did you think of Detroit calling his name at 13?
Well, again, the reason why I had him so high on my list is because of his B game. Tenacity, plays with pace, gets in there. He's a worker bee with a lot of skill. It's funny. He has a third line mentality with second or first line skill in that respect. Honestly, if he had not got hurt, his numbers were probably very similar to O'Brien. He was in that over 90 points a year. So I think sometimes we sort of some people missed on him. The other problem is because he plays in the U.S. division of the WHL, that division doesn't get as much love because there's not as much attention given to it by media, because there's almost no media there. So sometimes those players get drowned out in some respects. Great pick by Detroit. I have all the time in the world for the kid. He's a character kid. Don't be surprised he has a letter on his chest. Just needs to get a little bit quicker, fill out that frame. But I would not, and he has versatility, so he can play center as well. So wing, center, can play all around the lineup. I have a lot of time for Carter Bear. I would draft him on purpose.
Well, listen, I mean, we always love following these young men that, have local ties, and always exciting, especially when one goes in the first round. So we'll wish him well, and keep an eye on him as he continues his quest to make the National Hockey League with Steve Yzerman's Wings. I have to ask you about one player in particular. After the Jets selected Sacha Boumedienne, the Blackhawks went to the podium and took Mason West, who's from Edina High School, and apparently he's going to be returning to be the quarterback of the football team this year before then going to the USHL. Where did you have him? What did you think of this pick? And how risky is it to take a kid that is not even seemingly 100% committed to hockey at this point?
I had him in the mid-second round, and my concerns about, I understand why Chicago did this. They swung for the fences. Mm-hmm. You're 6'6" and 220 pounds, and you have that raw athletic ability, played 10 games in the USHL, got 9 points. Yeah, it's a tantalizing package. There is no way, if I'm the Chicago Blackhawks, that I'm letting that kid play football. Not a chance. No. I tell him, you can't play. Because he has a target on his back now. If I'm playing high school football in Minnesota and I'm trying to garner a scholarship, I'm trying to get people to notice me. Maybe I'm from a poor family and I'm trying to find a way to better my life, and I could do that with a college scholarship. I'm targeting him on purpose. I played football, I'd be a predator. If I'm a middle linebacker, or if I'm a defensive end, or I'm a free safety, I'm blitzing that guy all day long. And I'm coming after him, because if you knock out that guy, everyone in the football world is going to know you. a first-round pick of the NHL was hurt for the season, decimated by this incredible hit by X player. Now everybody's going to know who you are, and then you're going to gain all this attention, and the college team will come knocking on your door. Like, I think it's a dangerous proposition to let him play. Because
so what do you think?
If I was a defensive player, I'd come after him. Like, I would be a predator. I would go after him on purpose and see if I can knock him out of the game.
He's going to show up at development camp this week. He maybe has already. What do you think that first or maybe second conversation is going to be like with his representatives?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure what Chicago is thinking in terms of letting the player do what the player wants to do, but you just put a massive price tag on his potential. Like, that's millions of dollars you're risking because he wants to go play football with his buddies. Hey, look, if he's a third-round pick, I might let that slide. A first-round pick, not a chance am I letting him play. Not a chance. I would tell him, no, this isn't happening. I know this is what you want to do, but we have committed to you as a first-round pick. I think it's crazy to let him play.
It was a wild story watching it. I wasn't familiar with him. And Jason Bacala said something to the same extent of, it'll be interesting to see how that conversation goes right away, because you, as an NHL GM that invests a first-round pick into a player, you cannot have him being headhunted by big defensive linemen every Friday night for the first 3 months of the hockey season before they end up going to the USHL.
Good thing I'm not on the there's going to be people like me who played highly aggressive and didn't care, right? Like, I admit it. Like, I was, you remember Chuck Cecil? I like playing like Chuck Cecil, right? Free safety in Green Bay. Like, there's going to be guys that headhunt him on purpose to get a name for themselves. You're just putting a bullseye on this kid if you let him play. And if he gets hurt, what if it's a serious injury? What if it's career ending? What if he gets hit so hard he gets massive concussions and he doesn't work? It's problematic. You just wasted a first-round pick? Not a chance.
I wonder what insurance would work like on that as well, now that he has been selected, and there's a lot of money involved in that as well.
Well, the premium would be ridiculous. You'd have to go to Lloyd's of London for that kind of premium. And I couldn't imagine what the conversation with the adjuster would be. He's like, wait a minute, you're letting this kid play high school football as a quarterback? Are you crazy? All right, well, we're going to charge you this amount for this deductible, and it's not, you're talking in the millions.
Hey, Shane, before we go, 2 goalies picked in the first round, and I think a lot of people thought Josh Ravensbergen would have been number 1. He ended up going 30th to the San Jose Sharks, but it was Pyotr Andrianov who went to Columbus at 20th. Were you surprised at the order? And
yes.
Are both of these players first-round picks?
I had Josh at the end of my first, right at the end at 32. And then I had Pyotr 61, only because I have a hard time scouting goaltenders, so I admit it, and I get help. But also there is the unknown for me with the Russians on top of that. So I just played conservative with that. So I was certainly, would I have been surprised if he went in the mid-second? No. But he went 20th? That surprised me. And I thought it was a bit of a reach because I wasn't sure.
Was that the riskiest pick of the first round?
I think so. And we'll see how it plays out. I'm more than happy to admit I was wrong, again, with goaltenders. But I think even Brad, my co-host, would have raised some serious eyebrows about taking him at that spot.
Hey, just speaking of risk, before we go, we spent a lot of time talking about Wheaties center Roger McQueen going into this draft. And, a huge dude. Exactly the sort of player that you'd want, but missed most of last season. We kind of thought that his was the highest risk reward. Where did you have him in your final rankings? And what did you think about him going to the Ducks at 10?
I had him at 14, and it was not based on talent. It was just based on mitigating the risk of how many games he's going to end up missing, trying to manage that back. Now, my understanding from the medical reports is that it's not something that is going to be an issue in terms of re-injuring, but it will have to be, there'll have to be maintenance days. So how many days or how many games throughout a year is he going to miss? I chose 10%. That was my marker. So I calculated that in, and it moved him really down from that 7 spot down to into the 14 spot. So he moved into a different tier range. So if he didn't have that, he's a top 7, 8 pick, no problem, and the Ducks got value.
Shane, listen, I know you've got a few more things to wrap up post-draft. Thanks so much for doing this. Incredible work on Friday night, the round 1 that never seemed to end, and that was all on your shoulders as the analyst on Sirius XM NHL Radio. Fingers crossed we get back to normal, and we'll see you in person next year at this time, regardless of where the draft is.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it was a great time. Hopefully we get back to the normal draft as always.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for doing this.
Take care.
All right, good stuff with Shane. As always, we're going to look ahead to the next week. Free agency development camp coming up in just a minute with Mike McIntyre, the Winnipeg Free Press. Happy Canada Day to you all from our friends at Royal Sports, Winnipeg's #1 hockey superstore. And I was hoping to tell you to get down to Royal Sports and jump on some of that Canada soccer gear in advance of the Canada-USA game. But that's not happening anymore because we blew it against El Salvador. But I digress. Royal Sports, your #1 sports superstore. Tons of great new Bomber gear. You want to get that Jonathan Taves jersey before everyone else on your block? Royals got it right now. Not to mention soccer, softball, baseball, tennis, running, bikes, a massive Yeti section, and tons of cool stuff on the King's Skate, Snow, and Surf side. It's all waiting for you down at Royal Sports. And give them a follow at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information, and visit them in store at 750 Pembina Highway. Of course, our friends at Boston Pizza are ready to welcome everybody in on Canada. You got the day off, you want to hit a patio? Get out down there and check out the new summer menu. And of course, Thursday night, Bombers back at it. Great news. Brady Oliveira back at practice yesterday, but they'll have the game against the Stamps on the Stampede Bowl Thursday night at all local Boston Pizzas, your #1 spot for getting together with the gang to watch the home team on the big screen. Hey, staying at home? You can always order the new summer menu and all your BP favorites online at bostonpizza.com. All right, Mike McIntyre is good to go. Just before that, let's give a big cheers to Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, let's welcome in Mike McIntyre right now on WST. This segment brought to you by your Prairie Toyota dealers. And we'll want to remind you to get in and go with the Toyota Tundra. Quality that means it has the strength to take on any challenge, off-road or hauling a heavy load. And it's backed by the peace of mind knowing it's a Toyota. With a rear power window so you can let out the fresh air and take the road less traveled in comfort, room for teammates, friends, and gear. From $154 weekly for 60 months with 5.39% APR, $71.99 down. Hybrid options also available. Find out more and check out shoptoyota.ca. All right, busy weekend and a busy week coming up on the Jet Beat. Mike McIntyre joins us from the Freep. What's going on, Mike? Happy Canada Day to you one day in advance.
Yes, happy halfway through 2025. Time flies when you're having fun. Hard to believe that tomorrow marks the official midway point of the calendar year. Crazy. Seems like we were just ringing in the new year.
I'll tell you what really is crazy was hearing that Owen Martin was 4 years old when the Winnipeg Jets came back to Winnipeg in 2011. You want a reality check for everyone as to how many rings are on the tree?
That was a holy smokes, we're getting old moment. So was the fact that their first rounder, when I was looking up Sasha's profile the other day, I realized that he and I share a birthday. He's a January 17th birthday, just like me. He was born on my 32nd birthday. When I realized that the Jets are now drafting a kid that was born when I turned 32, that definitely made me feel a a little ancient. So I'm still young at heart, but my goodness, time flies. I mean, we're now at the point, Huss, where the kids that I'm talking to via Zoom, as we did on the weekend, or like just a couple hours ago down at the Hockey for All Center, as the Jets got development camp underway. Like, I'm literally talking to kids that are younger now than my own children. My son will be 24 in August. My daughter just turned 20. So it is, that's a humbling moment when you realize that you are now, you being me, old enough to be these kids' parents, or maybe older in some cases.
No doubt. Boumedienne, interesting player that they selected. And, we just had Shane Malloy, who I believe, if I recall correctly, said that he had him 13th overall on his list. I mean, a very interesting path this young man's taken. And, hearing from Mark Hillier, like the way he progressed during a season where he was 17 playing the NCAA, certainly very intriguing. It was intriguing enough for the Winnipeg Jets to, when he was available, jump on his name for their number one pick.
So it was really interesting this morning, Huss. I talked to Victor Klingzel, the Swedish kid that the Jets took in the 5th round, and he was telling us, the few media that were down there today. So him and his dad and Sasha's dad grew up playing hockey together, believe it or not. So him and Sasha have known each other since they were like tiny little kids. And now they both got drafted 4 rounds apart. But he was telling us that when he was playing hockey with Sasha as a younger kid, that Sasha was a centerman, not a defenseman. And he was talking about how he scored 1 million goals when he was playing as a forward. And then he said something really interesting. He said, given the way he now plays, you can see that he's kind of like a forward in that he's all over the ice, which made me think, now, let's just be cautious here. I am not at all suggesting the Jets have another Dustin Byfuglien in the making, but we all remember the way Dustin Byfuglien could jump up into the play and at times look like a forward. Boumedienne has that background and apparently loves to do that. And we heard Mark Hillier talk about his skating ability the other day. So yeah, he's a very intriguing player for sure. One that would appear to have a very high ceiling. And, when you consider that, like, this wasn't some rinky-dink program he was playing for last year. Like, BU is a big-time NCAA program, and that he was making meaningful contributions, playing against, in some cases, guys that would have been like 5-6 years older than him. Like, that's an incredible development path. No offense to the Canadian Hockey League and, guys tearing it up in the Western Hockey League or the OHL or the QMJHL. But when you have a player that is already being tested against, bigger, stronger, older men and more than holding his own, it's a very interesting pick for sure. And, you could see why the Jets, he would have appealed to the Jets. I think we all agreed going into this draft, probably getting another solid defenseman in the pipeline was probably the right move. And there were a couple interesting options that were there at 28. Blake Fiddler was a guy I think some of us thought that the Jets might have been looking at. Western Hockey League kid, son of Vern Fiddler, kind of like Sasha Boumedienne, another guy whose dad played in the show. And the difference being Blake Fiddler's a right shot. We wondered if the Jets might be looking more right side. I think in this case, Huss, they took the best player available, or what they feel was the best player available. And it'll be a lot of fun to watch what he can now go do. Not as a seasoned veteran of NCAA, because he's still only going to be in his sophomore year, but you got to think that he's going to play an even bigger role in a really elite program at Boston University, and that bodes well for his future.
Yeah, listen, I mean, we'll. I want to get to free agency, but development camp is underway. Now, they weren't on the ice today. There were media avails, and they'll be on the ice tomorrow morning. Just interesting looking at this roster, Mike. Obviously, the new draft picks are here. If you go down the defense core, the only drafted players that are here are Alphonse Frey, who was the 2nd rounder last year.
Yep.
You've got Edison Engel, who was the 6th rounder, and Sasha Boumedienne, and then I guess Garrett Brown in the mix as well, and then a bunch of invitees.
Yeah. Well, and that just speaks to, I think the need on the blue line. And, it's interesting when we talk about right side, I think we thought maybe that's the position of weakness. But Garrett Brown, who's just coming off a solid season with Denver, he's a right shot. Another guy whose dad played in the NHL. And Elias Salamonson, of course, is also a right shot. So the Jets have that. And he's obviously the most ready prospect they have. Maybe not so deep on the left side. So when you look at it, maybe it made some sense to pick a guy on the left side. But yeah, I mean, the blue line was clearly an area that they needed some replenishments. And the fact they have so many free agent invites. Avery Laliberty, by the way, I just want to quickly mention him at the very bottom of that list on your screen. He's an interesting guy. He's from Manitoba, Lorette, played in the MJHL last year, had a really nice season, got good size, 6'2". He's actually going to Northern Michigan this fall, where he will be a teammate of Zach Naring, a forward prospect with the Winnipeg Jets. My partner in crime, Ken Weeb, had a great chat with Zach this morning. Zach Naring, by the way, played in the Frozen Four with Western Michigan, and he looks to have exploded in size. He's listed now at 6'5", and he is a very tall player who had a great year. I asked Jimmy Roy about his development this year. The Jets, we talk about draft and development, and maybe the team in a way has got away from that a bit in recent years. There haven't been as many success stories graduating at least to the NHL level. Last year, though, I would say, Huss, looked to be a very good year for development for some of these prospects, whether it's a Zach Naring or a Garrett Brown in the NCAA. Certainly in the Ontario Hockey League, we've talked about guys like Kevin He, Kieran Walton, who absolutely exploded last year, and he's in camp. Jacob Julian had another great season, played in the Memorial Cup, won the Memorial Cup. And then there's Colby Barlow, who we also spoke to earlier today, who had a slow start to his year, Huss, but by the playoffs, he was a dominant force in junior hockey. And one interesting thing to watch as development camp happens this week, and then looking ahead to the fall, is how many guys the Jets now have graduating to becoming pros. Guys like Barlow and Julian. And so, there's some excitement around this team that they're going to get this injection of young talent. Braden Yeager obviously is another one. So they got Yeager, Barlow, and Julian, 3 guys that are coming out of the Dub and the OHL, jumping into pro hockey. Add them to the likes of, the Lamberts and the Chibrikovs and the Salamonson, and suddenly you've got some youth that are going to be pushing some of the established vets, and that's a good situation, I think, if you're the Jets.
Yeah, and for sure. We'll stay all over it. We'll have lots from development camp over the course of the week. But, Mike, let's get to tomorrow.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but this could be the final day in Winnipeg Sports Talk history that we get to refer to Nikolai Ehlers as a member of the Winnipeg Jets. How would you assess the situation going into tomorrow? I mean, there's a lot of people operating as if he is already gone. We've heard from a number of players, a number of sources that, they're going to see what the market is, but they haven't closed the door on Winnipeg. How much is it really open heading into July 1st? And, with a lot of speculation that Mitch Marner might not actually head to market and just sign with the Vegas Golden Knights through sign and trade, does that further impact the Jets' chances of even being in it for a Nikolai Ehlers?
Well, I think what it does is it drives his price up. I mean, his agent has to be loving the fact that the market has gotten so lean. And even, it's a much smaller piece, obviously, but a guy like Vladimir Tarasenko today, getting traded to Minnesota. I saw a tweet, Mike Russo said, well, that takes the Wild out of Ehlers because of the price point. But there's just there's not a lot of wingers, certainly dynamic wingers available. And Ehlers, if Mitch Marner does in fact do a sign and trade with Vegas, and there is no Mitch Marner sweepstakes tomorrow, like Nikolai Ehlers, him and Brad Marchand, I guess, are like neck and neck. And who knows what happens with Marchand? Maybe they find a way in Florida. If not, certainly Toronto looks like they're on the radar. I know there's been mention of Utah. To me, Huss, like I'm going to stick with my prediction all along, which honestly goes back to when Nikolai Ehlers was involved in like trade rumors. I believe the Carolina Hurricanes are the team that is going to be his next team. I really do. What I'm interested to see, so free agency starts at 11 a.m. tomorrow on Canada Day. How quickly do deals get announced, especially with all this reporting about GMs being warned about tampering and this and that? I almost feel now, Huss, like there's going to be, whether it's a 1 hour period or there's going to have to be some time tomorrow when free agency begins, that teams hold off on making announcements just for the optics. Because, like, let's face it, if Nikolai Ehlers to Carolina is announced at 11:01 tomorrow, this is just a hypothetical, how could there not have been tampering? They're not doing that deal in 1 minute. And there's no great, like there was that time where the NHL had built in kind of a negotiation period prior to free agency. They don't have that anymore. So any deals that get announced right off the hop tomorrow are certainly going to have the suspicion of tampering. And you know, certainly the agents, I think they're the ones heavily involved in that. Like they're the ones going around to GMs, probably offering hypotheticals. You know, if this player were to become available, hypothetically, what kind of number might you be looking at? So is that tampering? Like it's not GMs actively calling up players, I don't imagine, and saying, hey, we really want you. I imagine this is a lot largely the agents doing. But I got to think that Nikolai Ehlers' agent has been probably busy. And Carolina, with all their cap space, their need for another game breaker or a game breaker, the quieter fit that Nikolai Ehlers maybe is interested in down there, all the Europeans that they have, like Carolina just makes so much sense. They wouldn't be afraid to pay him. They've got a great coach in Rod Brindamore. I suspect, Huss, that door, you know, I'll use Kevin Cheveldayoff's words last week when he spoke to us, where he said, we're going to continue kind of trying to talk until we're either saying congratulations or thanks. I have a feeling that the message tomorrow from the Jets is going to be thanks, as in thanks for the memories, Nikolai Ehlers, and not congratulations on your new deal with your Winnipeg Jets.
You know what's funny about this? And listen, I kind of get it. Listen, Carolina is looking for, like, they've been trying to make a big splash for a while. They have a tough time getting players there. And, you know, if they can cut a check to Nikolai Ehlers and have him join the club, it'll be great. The one thing is, it seems like Carolina has been at a certain place for a while. And what they've been missing is not Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, they have some of that. It's kind of like, think about what happened in that Florida series.
Yeah.
They sort of got pushed around by the Panthers. I mean, like, I'm not sure they're solving what their needs and their problems are with him. And for all the talk about, well, Nikolai Ehlers should be a first-line player, is he a first-line player on the Carolina Hurricanes? I mean, he can get paid like one, but, I mean, when you consider what they have invested in Svech, in Aho's obviously the center, and in Seth Jarvis, who's a huge part of their team, like, I'm not sure that this is that spot of a playoff contending team that you just walk into on the top line. So, I mean, it's intriguing for a number of reasons. It sounds like the fit would be there, but I'm not sure that the situation is particularly all that much better than he has here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and, you know, other than maybe the paycheck is going to be a little bigger than what he would be able to get.
He's getting a raise no matter what, where he's going.
He is, for sure. And
if the money is the same, does he go to Carolina?
If the money with Winnipeg and Carolina, I mean, I wouldn't if I were him, but because again, this isn't a player that dislikes Winnipeg. Like, we've talked about other guys in the past, maybe that are moving on, that it wasn't a good fit or whatever. No, that's not the case. Like Nikolai Ehlers is, I think, assuming he moves on and does an interview at some point, and I suspect he'll say lots of nice things about Winnipeg, I don't think he'll be lying. This won't be a guy just trying to come up with something nice to say. Like, I think he will reflect on his time in Winnipeg genuinely with admiration and the city, the fans, his teammates, the organization. So yeah, I mean, if all things were equal and the money was the same, and I guess like that's what I don't know the answer, Huss. Like when Cheveldayoff says the door's still open, like is there an understanding that at the very least Nikolai Ehlers would circle back one last time tomorrow to the Jets at 11:02, let's say, and say, all right, here's what the Hurricanes are offering me, or here's what the Mammoth or whoever it is. Can you match it? I don't know if we're at that stage, like if that ship has sailed. But I just think to your original question about the lean free agent class, I feel like ultimately the number is probably going to be somewhere that the Jets probably wouldn't be willing to match, because I think the number is going to be really high. I do.
I mean, is there a ceiling on what do you think the range that the Jets would be willing or comfortable to go? And if it's an extra $500,000,
yeah,
I mean, is it worth sticking to it and losing a player that's that important to your team?
Well, and then there's the extra year, of course, which only the Jets can give him that 8th year, which again, today, if we're talking about, let's just say an $8 million AAV, like that's an extra $8 million in your pocket at the end of a deal, which is not insignificant. So does that mean anything? Does that mean enough? I would think so, but maybe he really does have his heart set on just a change for the sake of a change, a fresh start. What I'll be interested to see, like there's certainly talk about Marner and a sign and trade with Vegas. Like it's well reported out there that Carolina has interest. Like if you're the Jets before this day is done, are you at the very least entertaining the thought of seeing what the Hurricanes might say to a sign and trade if it meant that extra year and then getting something back as opposed to nothing? And I guess the other side of the coin is if you're the Hurricanes, are you entertaining that thought? Does that exclusive window mean anything to you and the extra year that you could get by doing that versus just waiting till tomorrow and signing them anyways and not having to give anything up, albeit just to a 7-year deal? So I don't know. I have not seen much chatter and I haven't heard much regarding the possibility of a sign and trade. It seems like at this point, if Nikolai Ehlers walks, the Jets are, I don't know if content is the word, but I guess resigned to the fact that he's going to walk and they're not going to get anything tangible back for him other than the cap space that will be created, which they will clearly look to use in other ways, which takes us, I suppose, to probably other things you want to talk about.
Let's get to plan B here. Assuming that Nikolai Ehlers is plan A, and if that ship leaves, is plan B Brock Besser? And what are you hearing about the mutual interest, if there is any, from both sides before we get to July 1st?
Yeah, I do believe there's some smoke here and maybe some fire. And I think the Jets have a few things going for them here. Certainly there seems to be an interest from Brock Besser and his camp. And when I say camp, I mean things like his wife, family, to perhaps stay in Canada. And it's why you're seeing teams like the Jets and the Edmonton Oilers have also been linked to Brock Besser. I think the Jets are in a much better spot financially than the Oilers to make the kind of deal that Brock Besser is probably looking for in terms of the AAV. The Oilers would have to do some other roster surgery. The Jets would not. The roster surgery would be not paying Nikolai Ehlers. So whereas the Oilers would have to find a way to clear some
Dude,
significant
the Oilers get mentioned with every one of these teams. I went through this with Dusty on the Lock Shop, and I said, well, how exactly is this going to work, guys?
I know.
You guys have $11 million in cap space. Evan Bouchard needs to be extended, which is going to probably be in excess of 10.
Yeah.
They said, well, they might trade Arvidsson. Well, that's 4. I mean, Brock Besser isn't showing up in Edmonton on half of what he'll get on the open market.
No, you have to move Darnell Nurse. That's bottom line. That's the only way, and that contract would seem to be almost untradeable at this point.
And he, like every other member of the Oilers, has a no move. That was the other thing. They might get Arvidsson. Sounds like he wants to leave. Okay, Adam Henrique. Henrique's got a no move.
Yep.
Like, who's going to be signing up to leave a team that's just been to the Cup final in the last couple of years and has Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on it? Not many guys, I don't think.
No. So I do believe that there is. This isn't just the case of the Jets maybe pining for a player and the feelings aren't mutual. I think there is interest from Besser's camp in a team like Winnipeg. And why wouldn't there be? First of all, it's other than playing for the Minnesota Wild, it's the closest thing to home that Brock Besser would have. So for family, and I don't know how many folks are aware of Brock Besser's story. It's well documented. He lost his father a few years ago, but his mom and other family, I believe, are all still in the Minneapolis area. The fit would seem to be right. Again, if we're talking about Ehlers out the door and Besser coming in, like whether it's a spot on the top power play unit, obviously a big time opening in the top 6, and a chance to play on a team that just won the President's Trophy, has the Hart Trophy winner in net, has some real good pieces up front in, Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, and Jonathan Toews, who's now obviously joining the organization, Cole Perfetti. So I just think a lot of boxes kind of on and off the ice would get checked off. The other thing, Huss, you and I know, and people who follow this team, we know how important character is to the Jets organization, that they value like high character individuals. Everything I've heard about Brock Besser is he oozes character. Like this guy is salt of the earth, like first ballot Hall of Fame human being. He's a very good person, in addition to obviously being a productive hockey player.
Oh, listen, 100%. And I've been obviously staying tuned with what's happening around the league, and it's been really interesting to see the reaction out of Vancouver.
Oh yeah,
that they're losing Brock Besser, who is an absolutely beloved member of that team and beloved teammate for the last number of years, and contrasted with the newcomer to Vancouver.
Oh yeah.
Who, listen, to Evander's credit, it seems like he's turned it around and he's in a better spot, and he certainly didn't have any of those episodes in Edmonton. But listen, there is some baggage for a lot of people when they think of Evander Kane, and we'll see how how all that goes. But the bottom line is they're losing a big part of that locker room, their culture, and someone that was, you talk to anyone, a great member of that team, and one that I think they would have loved to have had.
Yeah, and culture's been an issue in that Vancouver room for sure. So you can imagine what it's going to be like to lose a key foundational piece like Besser, and it looks like they certainly are losing him. It's just a question of to who.
Well, and if it was Winnipeg, I mean, there's a lot of things that he'll bring. Listen, the guy scored 40 2 years ago. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 20-plus goal seasons. Don't underestimate the importance of the fact that he actually shoots right, Mike.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes, indeed.
That is, you can't run out. I mean, you can, but it's not ideal to have all your top players shooting left. And, I think a right shot, right winger, that can produce would be nice, even if maybe doesn't have many of the attributes of Nikolai Ehlers.
Well, he's not a speed demon for sure. Like, you're losing some significant speed for sure. But this is a guy who knows his way around the net. And as you say, he's a proven producer.
Yeah, big time in the playoffs too. I mean, he's only had the 2 trips to the playoffs, but 4 goals and 11 points in 17 games in 1920. And then last year when they ran to Game 7 against the Edmonton Oilers, 7 goals, 5 assists, 12 points in 12 games. So certainly acquitted himself well in the postseason. Any other intriguing names on that UFA list that you think the Jets might be kicking tires or maybe more on?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Mangiapane is another guy that was of interest to me, and I think would check off some boxes. I think if the Jets are in on Besser, they're not in on Mangiapane as well. That would be more of an either-or situation in terms of looking for like an impact type winger. So he's an interesting fit. One guy I was kind of interested in, but it now looks like he will not become a UFA Huss, is the hometown boy, Cody Glass, who looks like the Devils have had a change of heart after hearing how much interest there was in Cody Glass. Originally, it was reported the Devils were not going to qualify him, which would make him a UFA. And I honestly thought that would be a nice gamble for the Jets to take to boost, the bottom 6 and a guy who could potentially move up. But it now looks like the Devils are actually going to qualify him, which means they'll keep him. I do expect, clearly the blue line with Hayden Fleury resigning, they're not going to be signing a defenseman, at least an impact defenseman tomorrow. There might be like a depth signing, something like that. I would also expect the Jets to look at probably getting a veteran goalie in the mix as the proverbial third stringer behind Hellebuck and Comrie. Again, something to buffer between like Comrie and the kids, as in Milic and Divinchidis, to serve as kind of a 1A, 1B with the Moose, but also, basically the Capo Kakinen signing of last year that certainly didn't work out for the Jets, but worked out pretty nicely for Kakinen in rejuvenating his career at the AHL level with the Florida organization in Charlotte. So, yeah, I think much of the heavy lifting has been done in Jonathan Toews. Obviously, getting a Besser type player would be, by Jet standards, that would be a pretty big free agent splash from a team that doesn't traditionally dip its toes in the July 1 waters, at least very deep. So, if that ends up being the signing tomorrow, I think Kevin Cheveldayoff can think that he did a fairly decent job of that. And then it'll be probably trying to address some depth type, whether it's a couple depth forwards that could battle for bottom 6 jobs. But, obviously the Ehlers situation and how that plays out will be a big storyline tomorrow, one way or the other.
Mike, just before we go, still waiting on qualifying offers from the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I think there's the obvious ones, but I mean, would anything surprise you coming out of this? Is there anything you're keenly looking at to see if a certain player's name is on that list? I mean, we know Sandberg's going to be there. Velarde's going to be there.
They will not be. Those guys will not be made free agents, UFAs tomorrow. Go out on a limb and say that. I mean, like a guy like Rasmus Kapari, who's now signed to go play overseas. I suspect the Jets will qualify him because that will allow them to at least hold on to his rights. There's no risk in doing so. I believe the deadline, it might be 5:00 Eastern. I think it's 5 today. So we should see that list trickling out shortly here. No, I don't expect any surprises on that front. Obviously, the Jets didn't exercise any buyouts this year either. There's only a few of them in the NHL. The other thing, that I'll be watching for tomorrow, and I don't think the Jets will be involved in this either on the aggressive end of things, the proactive end, or the receiving end, but is offer sheets. After the Holloway and Broberg situations last year, do we see offer sheets get utilized? And certainly guys like Velarde, I know there's some lists out there that have suggested that, he could be a candidate for one. I think if there were to be an offer sheet that came Gabe Velarde's way, and don't forget the player has to agree to sign it, in some ways that would just be doing the work for the Jets because they would match it, I fully expect. But, that's something to keep an eye on whether, and I don't think the Jets are out there looking to tender offer sheets. They don't even have their second round pick, which is a big weapon when it comes to that. But that'll be a storyline to follow as free agency gets underway tomorrow.
Mike, what's cooking with you and Weber at the Free Ball this week?
Yeah, so we'll have some tag team coverage from development camp. I got a fun story today on Victor Klingzel. He described his last 48 hours have been insane, truly insane. This is a kid, Saturday afternoon, he is sitting on an island in Sweden in a cabin watching the draft on TV. He told me today he got so frustrated after 3 rounds when his name wasn't called that he had to shut it off. Because he said he was seeing all his teammates, all friends of his in Sweden get drafted. And he actually missed his name getting called by the Jets because he had turned the TV off out of frustration. But then that triggered an incredible sprint to get from this island. And he said it involves trying to get a boat to get him to land. He finally arranged that, was able to get a late flight. He arrived in Winnipeg late last night, was put through the ringer in training today. And this kid is quite a talker, full of confidence. He believes the only reason he fell to the 5th round is because of his size, but he has a massive chip on his shoulder, which he has used as a motivator. So I'll have a fun story on him, a real good personality there coming tomorrow. And then, we'll have full training camp, development camp, or free agent development camp coverage, you name it. Busy week ahead here. Should be a lot of fun.
Beautiful, Mike. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll see you down at the rink.
You bet. Take care.
All right, there's Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. All right, we've got I'm seeing reports of a big signing here. We'll get to that in just a minute. Our friends at Breezy Bend looking forward to hosting the Manitoba Open this year. Of course, we do all our golf reports for Breezy. The golf report today is another winner on WST for Huss and Patty, and this was a big one. If you joined us on Wednesday, Pat Gregoire gave out his long shot play for the PGA of Rocket Classic. Aldrich Poitgetter, he won in a playoff at 150-1. So prepare yourself for a big-time victory lap by P. Greggy on Wednesday when he joins us on the program. But speaking of Breezy, there is limited availability right now to get into the Manitoba Open Pro-Am, which will be just an absolutely incredible event. Now, it's $4,000 for a team of 4 players, but listen to what's included in it. The opportunity to play with 2 rising stars from the PGA Tour Americas, one on the front 9, another on the back 9. Guys like JJ Spawn, Taylor Pendrith, Mac Hughes that all went through this tournament before. Now, the Pro-Am entry includes a VIP experience that includes 18 holes of golf, shared cart, 2 meals, one before the event, one after the round, unlimited on-course beverages, individual and team prizes, and every player in the event receives a tailor-made Spider putter valued just around $500. If you're interested in that, go to manitobaopen.com for the Pro-Am sponsorship opportunities, volunteer information as well. The Gold Eyes, Remis was mentioning, nice win yesterday, finishing up their series off today. Tomorrow's the Canada Day game at a special time of 4 p.m. So if you're looking to take advantage of the day off, celebrating our country and getting down to the ballpark, 4 p.m., tickets available 982 base and goldeyes.com. And tomorrow, ASD is back. Canada Day live racing Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. And we won't be on tomorrow. We'll be back with our regular picks on Wednesday. You could basically do the double. You could do the ball game at 4 p.m. and then head out to Assiniboia Downs to enjoy some live racing beginning at 7:30. Of course, asdowns.com for more information on everything going on out at the track, but live racing this week, Tuesday and Wednesday at Assiniboia Downs. All right, let's get Remo back in here. And, we've been talking there's a couple things percolating throughout the league. Does sound, Bob McKenzie reporting that Aaron Ekblad and the Panthers are making progress on an extension, which potentially would mean maybe Brad Marchand isn't going back to the Stanley Cup champs. He hasn't done a deal yet, and it does sound like he wants some significant money in term on his final NHL contract. I do think that if Ekblad makes it to tomorrow, there'll be big-time interest in a guy that's just won back-to-back cups, former first overall pick, and only 29 years old. But as per Bob McKenzie, breaking. Here we go. Aaron Ekblad, 8-year extension with the Florida Panthers. Does that say 6.1 AAV, Reem?
Yeah, he took a big discount, 6.1. Yes. So
that's, I mean, he would have been 7.58 for sure on the open market. He does get the 8th year, I guess.
He was going for the 8th year, and, Florida grinded him down to a 6.1, but he got the years. So he did leave a bit on the table, but you're going to a team where, you've been playing for, your entire career. You just won 2 Stanley Cups. They've got great weather there, Huss. So a bit of a hometown discount for Ekblad, 6.1. And Romanov just signed a big contract. This is less than the Romanov contract, which is very interesting. So what does this mean for Brad Marchand? We will wait and see. But Florida doing all they can to keep the band together. They've got a lot of guys signed for long-term at not crazy. Well, some of them are high. The Bobrovsky one was high, but that's expiring soon at valuation. So I should pull up their Puckpedia in a second.
Pretty much every
here.
guy below anything close to what they would have gotten on the open market. Sam Bennett would have gotten more money. I mean, even Kachuk's 9.5 right now. Looks pretty damn good. I mean, Forsling goes without saying. Mikola's on the books for $2.5 million this year. But long-term deals for Barkov, Carter Verhaeghe as well. Listen, they're going to be a problem for the rest of the National Hockey League now and for the foreseeable future right now. And Aaron Ekblad coming back, continuing to hold down that incredible defense of the Florida Panthers. Hey, speaking of signings, I know tomorrow is July 1st, and that is when contract can become official. But again, it's not tampering if you're re-signing your own players. And I've got a big announcement right now. Winnipeg has made a big signing. The Winnipeg Jets, no. Winnipeg Sports Talk has. And with tomorrow being July 1st, it is a pleasure to welcome in our big signing, the newest full-time member of the Winnipeg Sports Talk team, none other than our own Connor Hrabchak. He's all grown up. He's graduated from school, and now a big boy job all the time, 24/7, 365. You're on the clock, Connor. But Remis, let's bring Connor in and officially welcome him to the WST team as officially tomorrow. And by the way, congratulations. First day, it's a holiday. Not for you. You and Liz. Free agent coverage beginning at 1 p.m. But Connor, for myself and Reem, congratulations. It is great to have you on board. We thought we'd bring you in a fun way to let everyone know that the Winnipeg Sports Talk team is officially growing.
Absolutely, Huss. Thank you so much. As you know, the 2 years that I've been working here have been so much fun. Part-time, I've been in school. But to fully dive in as a full-time member, I could not be more thankful for your guys' support, for the WST community, the Discord, everyone who's in here every single day. So awesome. The people that join us Sunday at 9 a.m. And yeah, Huss, I'm glad we could get to the negotiation table early. No tampering. I was an RFA with arbitration rights. Didn't have to use it. No arbitration was needed. It's a good negotiation. We agreed to our long-term deal, and I'm looking forward to a great next couple years here, Huss.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, it's going to be awesome to have you. And listen, you've been a great addition to the team, since day one. But now, as you and we look to take everything we do here to the next level, you're going to be a big, big part of that. I mean, obviously, Connor's still going to be hosting stuff on the program. You'll see him more often on our regular program or potentially in when myself or Michael Remis aren't here for whatever reason. But we're also going to have now a full-time Jets reporter, and we'll have Connor out at dev camp later on this week and at training camp and at practices with daily reports on the program as well. And in addition, working on some more additional content, considering that WST Sunday Live has been such a big hit, and as we see, there's a huge demand for more Winnipeg Jets content, more hockey content, more Bomber content, and now that we've been able to get Connor on full time, we'll look forward to expanding that. So your first act, and as I say, myself and Remis may very well pop on tomorrow if the Jets do some big things, but tee people up on you and Liz doing a free agency takeover, 1 p.m., our normal time. We figured, and as Mike said, based on all the tampering stuff, I have a feeling it's probably a good idea to start a couple hours later, but let people know what they have to look forward to tomorrow when they tune into a WST.
Yeah, so if you have the day off work tomorrow, you don't have to change anything about your routine. We'll be going live right at 1 o'clock. And Huss, if the Jets do anything, I need you in a lazy river ASAP to go live hit.
It might be
on
a
the
beach.
Show.
It might be a beach or water, but yes, I will commit. I will commit to the bit. And
great.
And I got to tell you, I mean, listen, July 1st has not traditionally been a day that I've been, all fired up for from a Jets perspective. And listen, we all know what the situation is here. That this, free agency hasn't really been, it's tough bidding on open markets, with some of the things that Winnipeg has to deal with. I will say this, though, very interesting to hear what Mike had to say about the Brock Besser situation, saying potentially staying in Canada was something that he would like to do. Certainly geography for a change would play into the Jets' favor in this. And listen, I think we'd all love to see Nikolai Ehlers stick around, but if that is not going to happen, it's a huge hole in the top six. And Besser's a guy that's been a consistently good scorer in the NHL, had a 40-goal season, very beloved teammate. And I actually think there'd be a nice fit, in addition to the fact, as I mentioned, finally getting a guy with the right shot to play up there with all the other guys that are lefties.
No kidding. And we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about a potential Brock Besser ad. We're going to talk about Nikolai Ehlers, because by 1 o'clock, free agency opens at 11 or noon? He could be gone. He could be a Carolina Hurricane by the time we hit live. He could be on the Vancouver Canucks, and Brock Besser could be an option for the Jets. So we're going to cover it all tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Make sure you join us. Make sure you find the nearest body of water just in case the Jets make a signing. The Jets are usually in the depth market anyways. So if they make a depth signing, we'll cover that as well. Liz and I didn't go live on Sunday, so we haven't talked about the NHL draft, her and I, as well as the Winnipeg Jets had their first round pick and kept it. I was one of the people, Huss, that thought the Jets were going to move their pick this whole time. They ended up keeping it. So we'll talk about that as well. And any other big signings that come across tonight into tomorrow. If Marner goes to Vegas, we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So looking forward to hopping on. I'll be at development camp in the morning, talk a little bit about that as well. Going to be a packed day, and couldn't be happier to be working on a stat holiday, Huss. I'm going to do it with a smile on my face. That's
hey, listen, sure. I'm looking forward to seeing it as well. And listen, no surprise, but a lot of love from everybody in the chat. We can't go through them all, but you can check that out afterwards. And I wouldn't expect it any other way, considering the feedback we've gotten from yourself. Liz as well, with her incredible contributions, both to WST Sunday Live and, of course, what she was able to do, just killing it with some of the social things we did in around the playoffs. And we'll hopefully do some more stuff like that as we get into the season. But welcome aboard officially from myself and Michael. You definitely earned it, and cannot wait to have you part of the crew beginning tomorrow. And again, 1 p.m. tomorrow, our regular time. It is a holiday, but we'll have a free agency special with Connor, Liz, and who knows who else based on what happens. So
yes.
I hope you had a good weekend, because tomorrow's a work day. So anyways, enjoy the rest of the day, Connor. Officially welcome aboard, and we'll look forward to some free agent coverage tomorrow on WST with you and Liz, firing it up at our normal weekday time of 1 p.m. right here live on YouTube.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to doing plenty more hits over the duration of this long-term extension.
You got it. There it is. Give him a follow at Connor Hrabchak if you haven't already. And, of course, at Sports Talk WPG, where so much of the social content that Connor will be doing will be putting out. Connor, thanks again for popping on. Oh, and I see Liz is in the chat as well. What's up, Liz? Looking forward to the two of them getting after it tomorrow. And as they say, myself, Remo, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Maybe a guest appearance on our own station. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But yes, tomorrow, 1 p.m., the latest from around the National Hockey League. And of course, development camp continues tomorrow. 9:30, I believe they're on the ice. And, Tom O'Connell will be doing the show. But later on this week, we'll have more from development camp, and then really looking forward to throughout the season, in addition to the stuff that you don't see that he'll be involved in, having Connor down at the rink, getting us morning skate updates, practice updates, game previews, post-game stuff, and a whole bunch more as we continue to grow your Jets and more coverage right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Let's get Remo back in here. Remo, I know you were on the camera there, but this is going to be great for WST to have not only the additional content we're going to start driving out Jets-wise, but a lot more stuff with Coolbet. Connor's going to be involved with myself and Pat and some of the other guys there, and just continued progression into our 5th year now of doing this.
Yeah, wow, we've been doing this for a while, and nice to have someone else aboard pick up some additional duties, and I'm excited for what they're going to be bringing tomorrow at 1 o'clock on free agency. As we've never really done a free agency live stream. I remember Rick Bonus got hired. You were golfing.
I was golfing at Clear Lake. Yep.
Yeah, I had just got to Winnipeg Beach and we didn't have internet. Then I don't think I brought my computer. Like July 1's been pretty non-eventful for the Winnipeg Jets, and I think tomorrow has potential to be the most eventful July 1 that we've seen. Well, especially if Nikolai Ehlers does.
In a bad way.
Yeah, in a bad way, yes. Because that's usually they would trade away, like Andrew Ladd got traded or signed. I remember Enstrom, he signed, Bufflin signed. Like so many guys they've been able to retain, but we've never seen a key member like Nikolai Ehlers leave in free agency, and we'll see if that happens. I'm kind of hoping it does not, because I think they could certainly use his skill set on the second line. And we saw what the power play looked like when he got injured. It was certainly didn't look like number one in the NHL where it ended up finishing. So we'll see. Coolbet has odds on,
which is a perfect segue.
Yeah.
Into today's Coolbet lines, and listen, I know that we didn't necessarily want to be discussing this. I've tried to stay away from the NHL free agency specials, but here we are as we go into tomorrow. Which team will Nikolai Ehlers sign his next contract with? Now, originally Carolina was 3-1. And I will mention the fact that the favorite is plus 275, I think speaks to how little legitimate news there has been coming out of the Ehlers camp. I mean, everyone just says, oh, Carolina's interested. Well, Carolina's interested in Mitch Marner. They're interested in a lot of guys. Again, I do come back to the fact that if this is all about playing time and opportunity, can you tell me that it's going to be better in Carolina than it is in Winnipeg? I'm not sure that that's the case. Definitely a good team. And listen, at the end of the day, the size of the bag is going to have a large part of the decision. But the Carolina Hurricanes are the favorite. What's weird to me, Remo, is the next two. Vancouver at 4-1 and the Columbus Blue Jackets at 4-1. And I'll be honest, I haven't heard a lot about either of those teams really being front and center in taking a run at Nikolai Ehlers.
No, I've been following all the reports too. I haven't heard. Well, you know what? Columbus has been a team that people say, is looking to do something big, looking to shake something up. And they did have that very big surprise signing of Johnny Gaudreau a couple years ago. Maybe it would work out. Vancouver, I think, would be out. They just got Evander Kane. Do they even have cap room? Utah's a team looking to do something big. Is Ehlers the player they're looking for? And LA was a team that was rumored in on Mitch Marner. Would they pivot to Nikolai Ehlers? And I think Frank Cervalli threw out the Rangers a couple weeks ago when they traded Chris Kreider, saying, Ehlers would be a good fit there. So I'm locked in on Carolina. Emily Kaplan mentioned on X during the show that Carolina is the front runner, but there's other teams interested. And if Mitch Marner is going to Vegas and John Tavares is already signed, I don't have the WST official free agent rankings up right now, Huss, but I would imagine Ehlers, I don't know, is he number one? I would think.
If Marner's off the board, yeah.
And Tavares off. Jonathan Drouin's an interesting one. Alan Walsh putting out yesterday that he's going to test the market. Brock Besser, a name out there too. So, there's, number of teams there looking for a scoring winger. I'm curious what this contract is going to come in at, like over 8.5 AAV.
Oh, I think Ehlers probably will be if he goes elsewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if it started with a 9. I mean, just based on the amount of teams that are apparently interested and what it'll take to get him to move. I still maintain that I think the Jets should have just put that 8.5 on the table, the Hrabchak to Scheifele extension, if they were serious about keeping him and seeing. And maybe they didn't. Maybe it didn't get it done. I have no information one way or the other. But I would have been fine with offering him that, considering how important he has been to this team and what it means if he's gone as to replacing that. We mentioned Vancouver and Columbus at 4-1. Utah is at 6-1. The Jets are at 7-1. Leafs 8-1. Kings 10. Rangers 15. Oilers 20-1. I will agree with you though, Remo. I think the best value bet might be the Kings. We'd heard the Kings as sort of the favorite for Mitch Marner for quite a while, and then it became Vegas. Well, if Vegas gets him before he even gets to market, what does that do to a team like LA that's looking to continue to up their offensive ability? And Ehlers would be right at the top of that list. So, I mean, I think I like the Kings at 10-1 more than certainly Vancouver or Columbus. I mean, I guess maybe Utah's going to be there. They've got a lot of money. If they're not in on some of those other guys, they look to add through that way. But anyways, check those out. Off-season specials for the NHL. Now, CFL 110 is going to run Wednesday instead of tomorrow with free agency and it being Canada Day, but the lines are out in the Canadian Football League for Week 5. And I'm sort of stunned, Remo, that the Bombers are opening as only 3.5-point favorites in Calgary. I thought this number might be like 8, considering the Bombers have steamrolled 3 teams so far this year, winning by double digits and comfortably covering the spread in all 3 games. But the Bombers, minus 3.5 against the Stamps, minus 167 on the money line. Calgary plus 136 on the money line. The Argos open up as 2-point home favorites on the Ticats, minus 130 on the money line. Ticats plus 107. BC is at Montreal. Montreal 5.5-point favorites, and the biggest favorite of the week on the money line at minus 233. And the Ottawa Red Blacks are 2-point favorites in Edmonton. Take on the Elks. Elks a 2-point home dog, plus 107 on the money line as they look to win their first game of the season. And look at these Grey Cup odds since the weekend. Alouettes still the Cup favorite at plus 375. The Bombers now in the 2-hole at plus 350, slightly ahead of the Riders, who are at 4-0 at plus 375. Argos plus 550. BC 10-1. Ottawa plus 1050. And then we go Calgary, Hamilton, and the Edmonton Elks. Baseball action tonight. Yankees and Blue Jays going at it in Toronto. Jays plus 121 home dogs. They closed out their series against the Boston Red Sox yesterday with a 5-3 victory. I'm glad we've been so busy, Remis, that I didn't have much time to talk about Canada's crushing loss yesterday to El Salvador. I'll be chewing on that one for a little bit. We missed Canada-USA on the weekend. Incredibly disappointing result for Canada, Canada's men's soccer team. But tomorrow we move on. It is all about free agency in the National Hockey League. Well, keep your eyes out on our Winnipeg Sports Talk feed because we will have confirmation on the qualifying offers as soon as they are made. And one other thing, Remo, that we'll do on Wednesday, for at least who's left, there will be a number of younger players that won't get qualifying offers that will be available. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets sort of, look to pick at a player or two to maybe give them somewhat of a second chance on their career and see if they can turn it around in Winnipeg. So while tomorrow will be the focus, the big guys at the top of that list, the rest of the week will be quite interesting, especially for teams like Winnipeg, who traditionally have sort of picked at the periphery of the free agent market.
Yeah, Nikolai Ehlers leaving. If he does, they don't re-sign him, would give them a lot of salary available. They have to sign Velarde and Sandberg. And they have 23.51 left, so they still will have a lot left over if they're going to the cap ceiling. Could we see some extensions for the Winnipeg Jets? Adam Lowry and Kyle Connor will be eligible starting July 1. And the other one, Morgan Barron, I can't imagine his contract would be significant. I guess other Jets potentially leaving. Mason Appleton. We've been talking a lot about Ehlers, but he's been a Winnipeg Jet for a long time. 2 different stints. Could he be on his way out? And Brandon Tanev as well. His second time with the Jets. Will he join his brother in Toronto? And they have to sign some depth to replace those guys. Defense for me, I don't think the Jets will be active at all in terms of defensemen. They have so many signed. Pionk, Morrissey, DeMello, Shen, Miller, Stan, now Fleury, and Heinola. And they have to sign Sandberg. So that is a lot of defensemen already, with Elias Salamonson pushing with the Moose last season.
Well, what I'm kind of interested in is, depending on what happens tomorrow and who's available and who's looking to add or looking for some depth on the blue line, if they can't get what they want on the UFA market, do they circle back and potentially talk to Kevin Cheveldayoff? Because I do think it would make sense for the Winnipeg Jets to move at least one of those defensemen. Like Hayden Fleury just signed a 2-year deal. I don't expect him going anywhere. But whether it's Logan Stanley, whether it's Ville Heinola, potentially even Luke Shen, who's got 1 more year on his deal. I do think that, they want to have that much depth on the blue line, but it does become problematic when everyone's on 1-year deals and you potentially have to lose someone to waivers when you send them down. So I don't think the deck chairs have finally settled when it comes to the Jet blue line, and they certainly haven't in the league, because that's going to get rolling tomorrow.
Yeah, Andy Strickland threw out there that he thought Luke Shen could be on the move, that it wasn't a fit in Winnipeg, and you saw them shuttle him back and forth between Winnipeg and Nashville. What would the situation be like next year? So we'll wait and see. We are getting some breaking news right now. Cam Robinson on X, hockey_Robinson, who we had on here, saying, Taves was coming to Winnipeg. He's putting out right now on X, hearing Edmonton is finalizing an extension for Evan Bouchard, 4 years at $10.5 million per season. So that's Cam Robinson right now, 6 minutes ago on X. So we'll wait and see that is getting finalized. Bomber?
Cam's done a pretty good job of being right on some of these hunches that he's had. So usually those hunches aren't really hunches, and they've got some pretty good info on that. So, that's exactly where we thought that deal was going to be, in and around 10.5 for Evan Bouchard. And certainly the Oilers don't get the length of term that maybe they would have liked, but bottom line is they take care of a major issue. There will be no offer sheets in going forward. And by the way, did you see the Blues announcement on the weekend of the Joel Hofer extension?
I saw that he got extended, but I didn't see.
Go to the Blues Twitter, because of course there was plenty of rumors that after what the Blues did to Edmonton last year, that Edmonton might return the favor, and needing a goaltender, they might think about an offer sheet on Joel Hofer, who's coming off a great season. Okay. Well, Joel Hofer has his extension, and the Blues did not tweet out that, hey, we're pleased to announce that Joel Hofer has agreed to terms. They tweeted out, Joel Hofer won't be subject to offer sheets after signing a 2-year contract extension worth $6.8 million, 3.4 AAV. So congrats to the Winnipeg native, and good on the Blues social media team for having a little bit of fun with that. Anyways, great show today. Thanks to Mike for coming on. And of course, Shane Malloy. There was lots to chew on coming out of the draft. And certainly it's going to be a busy week. We got Bombers on Thursday. And as I mentioned earlier, great news. Brady Oliveira back at practice. We'll see what that means on Wednesday when we get the depth chart for the first ever Stampede Bowl. Well, we'll certainly have more on the Bombers and the latest on development camp and, of course, NHL free agency. Where is Nikolai Ehlers going? Brock Besser and more. Tomorrow, 1 p.m., Connor Hrabchak, Liz Hood, and guests tomorrow, depending on what happens. And then we're back at it on Wednesday, I should say, with the latest from development camp and the aftermath of the free agent frenzy. Thanks to everyone that joined us. Hope you have a wonderful Canada Day tomorrow. Don't forget, if you are able, jump in with the gang live at 1 p.m. for the latest on free agency. Myself and Michael potentially will pop in, but you know you can count on us being back Wednesday at 1 p.m. for your next full edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily and CFL 110 as well. If you're YouTube, turn your notifications on. Might actually do a live show on Wednesday morning. We'll see about that. And of course, you'll be reminded that the gang is going tomorrow, 1 p.m. for Free Agent Frenzy here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Have a great night and a happy Canada Day. We'll see you Wednesday on WST.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.